Hello everybody and welcome back to Collector's Dream YouTube channel. Hope you guys are all doing very well today. Today the topic, my friends and I have been discussing about the new change that's been brought about by PSA during this month, and it is a pretty big and substantial change to the grading standard. So right now, if I have the screen open on my desktop, and basically there's been a change in the centering tolerance for PSA 10 cards. And it's a change that's going to be tougher to grade cards moving forward. Now, if you look at the previous tolerance, it was for a PSA 10 card, it is sitting at 60 to 40% off centering. So OC for off centering, it was historically okay, and you can maybe get a regrade on a strong PSA 9. There is a chance that the grader can see the card, it can be slightly off up to a 60-40 split, and it can still classify as a PSA 10 if you get lucky. But now it seems like PSA has tightened the off-centering standard to a now 55 to 45 standard. And some people, they would argue and say that that should have been a start to begin with, because I'm sure we have all seen some pretty suspicious, pretty dodgy PSA 10s in the past. But if you're in a perspective of an investor or a collector, and you always are submitting cards to PSA, the 60 to 40 split worked to your advantage. For the person buying the card, what it means to them is that they just need to inspect the PSA 10. Like, for example, I have some PSA 10 cards, right here, an English Green Ninja from Shroud of Fable, and a PSA 10 EV Heroes Umbreon V. So what it meant in the past is that you could have perhaps gotten lucky in your grading, and if you want to buy the card, just make sure you get a pretty good look to make sure the cards are not. So you're buying for the card, and you're not buying the grade, because some people, they blindly just say, oh, it's a PSA 10, it's gonna appreciate, but then you're gonna ask yourself, are you really collecting the card or you're collecting the slab? So now with PSA tightening the grading standard, it's gonna be more difficult from the perspective of you grading, sending the cards in. So what that means is, let's have a look quickly at the grading price. So if we have a look right now, they have also raised the price by nearly 20% to grade each slab now. So that is actually a pretty big increase if you ask me. That's 20%. It's a huge upcharge now compared to the old price of $14.99 per card. And then now if you look over there, it's $16.99 per card. So it kind of makes me wonder whether or not I should send these cards in for grading, because now you're taking in a lot more risk. So you need to, if you're trying to get a submission going in 2025, I think it's prudent that you watch this entire video and just get a better perspective and information on whether or not you should be more selective on whether the cards are worth grading. I would say the raw value of the card, if it's even below $50, I will be very hesitant now to submit a card, because there's more at risk. If it comes up at PSA 9, or sometimes I've pulled pack fresh cards and it comes back as a PSA 8. One example is the Green Ninja EX that I have pulled, and it was pack fresh. I was so thrilled to pull it, but then after a month of wait time, it came back as a PSA 8. And there's not much I can do, because that's like, factory cut and factory centering, right? So that's, just the luck of the draw. So I would say heavily suggest that if the card is below $50, just don't even bother sending it in, unless you really just want to encapsulate and keep the slab as memory for yourself. But from an investing perspective, you gotta be very careful. One other thing to note is that the pricing doesn't only affect a singular card, because you will not be only grading a single card, right? We're talking about bulk submission, so minimum is 20 cards. So if we do a quick math, at the cheapest level that I've been able to manage last year was $13.99 during the promo, and that was the cheapest I've ever seen it. But you could have seen $14.99 pretty regularly last year as well. And now with this new price, it's hovering at $16.99 to $17.99 now. So that's $2 to $3 extra per card. So what does that actually translate to in a 20 card submission? So for 20 card at $13.99, it will be $280. Whereas now with the new price increase, and I'm using a $17.99 as an example, during the January special, and then that is going to be a $340 submission. So you're looking at a $60 swing, $60 more expensive to grade 20 cards. So that's not a small amount of number. And a lot of people, they don't only do 20 cards, right? If you're talking about like a 40 card submission, so that's going to be $120 extra. That's huge. That equals to another, you could have purchased a PSA 10 slab on eBay for $120 easily. So that is the amount of increase that we're talking about right now. In terms of the modern English, you gotta do a bit of research, because some sets are notoriously bad for card print conditions. The Scarlet and Violet are getting better in the latter half of the era, I would say. But for Sword and Shield, some sets are pretty dodgy, and from personal experience, I've ripped a number of the Charizard UPC, and I don't know if it was just a batching issue, but the Charizard UPC promo, they have a variety of Sword and Shield packs, and then those, when I ripped them, they were really bad condition. So that is already putting you at a disadvantage when you submit the card for grading. So the set will matter when you pick the cards. And secondly, going between English and Japanese, I have a Japanese slab here. If you're grading Japanese cards, this change is not going to be a huge game changer for you. You're namely just going to be facing a higher grading fee, 20%. But if you're grading English, you got to be very careful on what you're submitting now. For vintage, I mean, this change is just gonna, really harm people who want to grade vintage cards, such as this Charizard right here. Like, I thought the centering for this when I pulled it, it's quite heavily off center, as you can see it. But with this new change, if you have any, you got to be really tight now in terms of the centering standard. So I would also not suggest that you submit vintage lightly. Just make sure the card is absolutely pristine to have a shot at PSA 10. And maybe in the comments section, please let me know how your grading experience have been since this change. And looking on Reddit and other forums, it seems to have PSA have updated the grading description from the 14th of January of 2025. So it's been in effect for about 2 weeks now. So if you guys have a submission, that's sitting in PSA right now, feel free to leave a comment later on when you get it back to see if you feel a difference in terms of your PSA 10 rate. I've submitted bulks and had a success rate of 90% at one time, and that was my absolute best case scenario. I submitted maybe 50 slabs, and then 90% of them came back as a PSA 10, and I inspected them pretty carefully, so that was a huge win. I was pleasantly surprised for sure. But then I've also, in recent memory, I've been getting around 50 to 60% PSA 10 rates, so that rates have really plummeted, and it's getting harder and harder to get PSA 10. Another topic to touch upon is now for people who might have enjoyed buying raw cards on eBay or from card shows, now it is gonna be more difficult and more risky for you guys to send cards to PSA, and yeah, it's just gonna be difficult moving forward. And maybe that also has a relationship with why so many cards now are in PSA 10 form are selling for $200 to $300, in the Scarlet and Violet era, and that is something that I've definitely not foreseen coming in a short, a year and a half to 2 years since Scarlet and Violet base set have launched. When this era have launched, I was thinking, man, these cards, the artwork is not that great. I wonder how long it will take for slabs to be worth, in the triple digits. And then, with the Pokemon TCG Pocket game and with all the craze that's surrounding the hobby right now, it's just absolutely crazy. You can have a Tyranitar PSA 10 or a Ninetales PSA 10 or, a Bulbasaur PSA 10. Basically anything PSA 10 and a Scarlet and Violet are hitting really silly prices right now. So yeah, that's maybe on the closing comment that in this video is that with the market might be reflecting the change. They are understanding how much more difficult it is to get a PSA 10. So maybe it will also be a smart move to just kind of hold on to your PSA 10 for now and see how it does in the future, because it's only gonna get tougher and tougher and perhaps more and more expensive to get a PSA 10 in the future. And it's also a very good and smart play. I think that PSA is tweaking the description, and instead of going the black label or the CGC pristine 10 method, because as you may or may not know, BGS, they have the highest form of the grading standard is the black label 10, and then similarly for CGC they have the pristine 10, but PSA doesn't play that game. But then they also have the flexibility and the option to adjust their description, such as this. You know, they can see how the market is doing right now. You know, Pokemon is the #1 you know, genre of cards that's being graded out of all the hobbies, and definitely #1 for PSA in terms of their market share. So PSA see, hey, the market is doing so well, I'm just gonna jack up the price, and they also have the power and authority to do so because they're the market leaders, right? So yeah, they bumped the price up by 20%, which is huge, and then they tightened the grading margin. So those both work against us as collectors to want to get the 10. So yeah, this video just quickly want to bring this to your attention, and I also want to hear your comments if you guys have seen your PSA 10 ratio go down. So we'd love to hear the comments. If you guys like this video and enjoyed it, please give me a like and subscribe for more Pokemon TCG content. I'll see you guys very soon. Talk to you guys later.